I fully realize I'm standing between finishing and also dinner and have a fun party tonight. So I just want to get a show of hands in the audience. How many of you are starting in the med spa business in the last 6 months or a year? Okay, how many of you were practicing insurance-based practice before transition into cash-based? There's a few of you? Okay, so they wanted me to talk a little bit about my journey, and I'm very grateful for InMode, and I want to thank InMode for inviting me here. My journey really started in 2018 getting into the aesthetic business, and I have 7 InMode devices currently in my practice. I'm working towards the 9. I'm trying to catch up to Christina there. But really, InMode really has been a great partner for me, and it really has transformed my life. So, you know, like, this is my family, and I went into the aesthetic business because my specialty is geriatric medicine, and they really have my wrong slide, so I don't know where you got this version, but that's okay. I'll talk through, and we have 15 minutes, so I'll just go through it. So my background is I'm internal medicine, board certified internal medicine, and I did a fellowship in geriatric medicine. In 2008, I was hired by LECOM Medical Center, Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, to become their geriatric post-acute care director. In 2008, I was practicing as a geriatrician, going to nursing homes and helping them develop the integrated sort of vertical continuum of care. So during that time, you know, in 10 years' time, I worked really hard. I had a decent salary, but every day I woke up in the middle of the night, I was paranoid about losing my job, right? Because the suits coming to my office every other day. Hey, Dr. Lin, are you seeing more patients? Why did you cancel that patient? Hey, why did you not go there and here and the next thing? And I'm all happy to do all of that. But the thing is, it's my family I started worrying about, because in 2008, I realized I've been at it for 10 years. And at the time, I had an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And I was like, well, you know, how long can I keep doing this? And then what kind of lifestyle do I really want? And do I really want to be at the mercy of a suit coming to my office every day, telling me how to practice medicine? So I just decided in 2018 I need to look for an alternative. Unfortunately, you know, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and then I just kind of found this aesthetic fellowship, and I just kind of explored it, and I pursued it. So I decided I was going to do that, and in 2019 I began my journey. Now these are my tools and toys. So because of aesthetic medicine, I'm able to enjoy the stuff that I like to enjoy, and also increase my tools in my toolbox so that it can make me more efficient to run my business. So currently, my other job, in 16 years now, I oversee about 1,000 skilled nursing home facility beds in northwestern Pennsylvania, and I have about 1,200 employees under my service line that I'm in charge of. But while doing that, I still have this insecurity that I'm going to lose my job. So I started the aesthetic business, and this is what has become. So really, I think the aesthetic business has really transformed my life and be able to provide what I want to do in life. And I'm only sharing that with you because I think it's important in medicine. All of us that have been in medicine for a long time, we're sort of restrained or constrained by this idea that because you're an internist, because you're a geriatrician, because you do primary care, you can't possibly do liposuction. You can't possibly do a body contouring, and that's just not true, right? With the proper training and proper thought process and the determination, you can do all the above in the United States of America, and that's really what I wanted to sort of share with all of you. Now, I grew up in New York City, and my journey, I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. I went to medical school there. I got trained there. I sort of set my roots there, and that's where I'm at. But I grew up in New York City. I'm a city boy, and now, 20-some years later, I live on a 17-acre, middle of nowhere, and I wear my plaids on weekend, and I try to be like a redneck wannabe, sort of, Okay, so I sort of went through my career, and this is what 2025 looks like for me. Really, that middle picture that you see, that really is the beginning of my journey in sort of transforming my life and my career. And I'm so grateful for InMode, and I'm so grateful for the partnership and all the people that are here. You know, Dr. Meningas, all of you must know him because he's been great. Inspiration, Dr. Mulholland is another one. And then Dr. Ramirez, Henry, is sort of the other one, because at that first training that I had with BodyTite, they're the one that sort of trained me on how to do it. And the story is, BodyTite really changed my life, right? I started my aesthetic journey in 2019. And this is Erie, Pennsylvania, by the way. So if I can make it in Erie, Pennsylvania, all of you can make it anywhere, just like Christina in Arizona. We're below the poverty line. It's literally from November until like Easter, you don't see any sun, so nobody really wants to be there. And it's about 100,000 population surrounding Erie community. And within that small little space, I have about 10 med spas around me in the 10-mile radius. So it's secondary market, somewhat competitive. And I just wanted to have that background to share with you that even in Erie, Pennsylvania, we can make it a success in the business. So this is my team. And over the years, I have created sort of a continuum of care in terms of the med spa, right? I believe in that just because my previous background in geriatrics, I created a continuum of care for them. So in order to do that, you do need 7 devices, and you do need all the tools in your toolbox. And having the devices really puts you at the competitive edge. All the speakers before me has said the same thing, and I can attest to that. So I'm just going to share a little bit of story about how BodyTite sort of helped me sort of really hockey stick my practice. And for those of you that are considered buying a device, and for those of you that are sort of just bought a device and you're sort of anxious and they made you come to the user meeting to meet a lot of people so we can help you with your business, I think hopefully I can share with you my experience, and we can go a little bit in depth tomorrow on the sales event. And Chris sort of started that roadmap, and I know he and we sort of have a synergistic talk tomorrow, so please come to our talk and we can share that with you. So this is the amount of money that I did in one night for my BodyTite event, okay? And I know it's shocking, and then unfortunately, Joy, who used to work for another agency, now is an employee of InMode, and I just sort of reunited with her because she was there that night, and she was the one helping us working on the sales event, okay? So I'm gonna go into a little bit more in depth about it tomorrow, step by step. And for those of you that are just starting, just like me back then, I don't have a lot of resources and stuff. So you can't go out, and I know Chris has an awesome technology and stuff, and it's really gonna be great if you could put everything together. But if you don't have the resources, what can you do to start that sales event so you can get this kind of results? And back then in 2021, I did not have the resources, and we did it in that night. And we did this as a joke. I told my staff, my team member, these people that you just saw, I said, you know what, if you guys can make it to 100,000, like, we'll go on a big trip. And that was sort of like a joke. And I said, any trip you guys want to make. So they were serious, and I didn't know how serious they were. They were dead serious. And then when we came up with this result, obviously I was thrilled, and I was happy that we can share this with the team. So in fact, we did $165,000 just on the BodyTite device, okay? And then that night, the total retail sales, because we had injectables, we have other products and stuff, we did a total of $217,000 that night. And there was a 109% show rate because we had RSVP, and I'll go through all that process, but then there were people that couldn't make it, so they called in and they said, could we get that deal and that package because they can't make it? So the tips and tricks of optimizing the result, and I'm gonna go over in detail of this tomorrow, but just sort of an outline and stuff, and I only have 5 minutes, so we gotta talk about choosing the right date. You start the planning process 8 weeks in advance, so whatever date you're gonna have your sales event, at the minimum, you need to start the process 8 weeks before, okay? And you pick the right date, and what that means is days of the week in your area. I don't know what that looks like, month, you know, obviously summertime is probably not ideal if you're trying to sell lasers and stuff. So you gotta look at your seasonality of your technology, and then also your local sort of mom, you know, is it better to do it Thursday evening because they're tired of the kids, they need one night out, and Friday, the weekend comes, so everybody's busy. So in our experience, Thursday seems to be really a good day. And also, we usually like to wait 3 weeks after school starts, because when all the kids are settled and now they get into a routine, Thursday seems to be like a pretty good night for a show, okay? But before you do it, you have to have a clear goal, right? Covey always says, begin with an end in mind. So you don't begin anything until you have clear goals of what you're trying to achieve, and you set that goal. So in my case, I just set this ridiculous goal. I thought it was gonna be ridiculous that we're gonna reach 100,000 a night, but it turned out that it was not unrealistic because we did every one of these processes correctly. So there's a strategic promotion and RSVP process prior to the event, and then we'll go through that a little bit. And then there's a list of activities we do 8 weeks, 7 weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, we sort of a countdown. Then we have a 4-week prior, what we're supposed to do. And then phone calls, and we'll talk about a little bit about phone calls. Phone calls are probably one of the most important things, not just for the sales event, but if you have a new practice, you need to set up a system or process in place that you need to have a system of follow-up. And again, in the beginning, you may not have the resources to do AI, you may not have the resources to do this automated process and stuff, so even the manual process is important. And in fact, I would argue in the beginning, because you're trying to establish rapport with all of your patients and stuff, you need to be the one sort of making the phone calls if you can. Not that if you're the only provider, I don't expect you to be, but your representative in your practice need to be the one to reach out and follow up. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There's very specific phone scripts that I train my staff on doing, because there's a little bit of sales technique, and then I'll share that a little bit with you guys tomorrow. Okay, everybody plays a role the day of the event, and we execute it together, so there's one team, and we'll go through that process together. And I'll share these slides with you again tomorrow at the breakout sessions if you want to come. And you know, Christina, everybody before me, all the speakers talked about packaging and stuff, so that really is the key to everything. And there's a concept that I like. You're doing the same amount of work whether you're selling Botox or you're selling a combination treatment. So the goal that you want to have is every consultation that you do, in my mind, is that I have a goal in mind. I want that patient to walk out per patient encounter. I want to have an average sort of sell of $1,200 to $2,500. And if you have that in mind, you're going to be more likely to talk to the patient, like Christina said, and find out what they really need. And that's really the key to actually increasing your revenue in the beginning with the limited number of patients that you have. And you want to cultivate that, because those are the patients that are going to be talking to all their friends, and that's how you build your practice over time. There's other things during that event that we talk to other reps, like the Botox, Allergan reps, or Galderma reps, or any other neurotoxin reps, and I play them against each other, right? Obviously, we buy Botox and we buy Dysport, and I would say, well, you know, Dysport is kicking in like, you know, 3,000 units. How much are you kicking in, right? And they'd be like, nothing. I'm like, well, then I'm not using you. And then they'd be like, oh, we'll do 3,000 as well. But really, Dysport only gave me 1,000 units, right? So, so the secret sauce to a successful launch, again, is during the day of the event, we have a very specific process, just like the 8 weeks prior to the day of the event. And we do an educational presentation, Q&A, that it's not done by me. It's done by my staff, office manager, somebody like Chris, who can really talk about the money and business and also the results, and also show our staff's personal experience, like he said, play on the emotional side of it, because they would ask the staff, right? And I'm behind I'm in the consultation room because after that presentation, I'm doing a quick dating one-on-one consultation. The goal is not to find out all their problems. They have set it up in the presentation, so when they come into the consultation room, it is essentially, are you interested or you're not interested? Here's the form. I think you're good for package A, B, C, and D, because we have 3 or 4 different packages. So if you come in and you they fill out the paperwork, I see it, I'm like, I think you're good for package B. That's good. Do you have any questions? And then if like, no, then you move on to the next stage, which is where you get their deposit and you talk about financing and stuff. And then we have a little bit of giveaways, during the time that after they sign, after they put down the deposit, then you give them the giveaways and scheduling and stuff. So those 3 and 4 is sort of together, and it's on a separate section of wherever the practice, however we set up, and we can talk a little bit more about that, okay? And I think I'm just about out of time. We'll talk a little bit about all of this tomorrow, but a couple books real quick. There's a million books out there. So those of you that are starting new, you need some sort of thing to anchor on to think about your business. These are 2 books that really sort of transformed my thinking from being a geriatrician to being a true entrepreneur. Med spa is super competitive, right? It's a service type of industry. So my favorite book is Will Cadera on reasonable hospitality. He's in the business of even more competitive than us. He's in the restaurant business. So how does he compete with the top restaurants in the world and become world #1 2 years in a row? So that's what the whole book is about. So there's a lot of tips and tricks in there that I think it's reasonable for you to adopt and also train your staff towards that culture. The second one is the 10X rule. This is by Grant Cardone. How many of you know him or heard of him, right? So he's kind of this obnoxious real estate guy, really kind of obnoxious. However, everything that he puts in there is sort of really true to what we have to do to fight on a daily basis. And that 10X book rule is essentially, you're doing something the same thing. Whether you do it, you have to get up in the morning and do something every day. So if you decided you're going to do something, you might as well go out and do it so that everything you do is you're trying to 10X everything. So when I do the consultations in the patient's room, they come in for Botox, I know it's a $500, $600 gig. My thought process is, well, how do I help them to improve their lifestyle? How do I help them to get them well? Because most of them coming in Erie, Pennsylvania, they're not well, right? They just want to look better, but how am I trying to educate them so that I can 10X that consult and 10X their health for them? So that's sort of the concept that I have when I approach patients, after I read that book. And then I talked about that. And so the other thing that I'm big on is free media. So you want to establish yourself as your local experts. So in Erie, I give free treatments to all the anchor in the local newscasts, news lady. So Jill McCormick is one of the leading anchors in Erie. I give her free treatments, and she does a sit-down interview with me when I have a new service, when I open up new things, even in my geriatric world. I leverage the media to give me free marketing. And now I've established myself as an expert locally and stuff. And you want to be the first to do stuff. So that's very important to me as well, right? So Chris said he wants to be the first to have that Optimus Max. I was the first to have the BodyTite in Erie, and I was the first to have Empower. In fact, they wouldn't sell Empower to me because I wasn't an OBGYN or a urologist, right? But I sort of fought, and then Henry came and trained me, and they were okay with it. So you want to be the first to do things, and you want everybody to know that because you want to lead the pack. So this is our opportunity the next 4 or 5 years, despite your politics. This is the wave of the future, and we're in a really good space. So we got to be able to leverage it, and you just have to decide that you're going to do it. And then if you do it, don't quit. You're going to be successful. So I'll leave you with this. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. And it is the courage to continue that counts. And this is what I live by every day. So thank you, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow.